Good evening. My name is Melanie McGacken from the Family Support Center of New Jersey. I hope everyone is joining us from the comforts of their home this evening. Please note, once we start the webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions by clicking the dialog box on the right-hand corner of your screen. We will try to get to as many questions as time allows. I would like to welcome you to the first of a series of webinars being provided by attorney Hillary Freeman. Hillary is deeply committed to her work representing people with disabilities and their families. As the sister of a man with autism, she is able to combine personal experience with her legal training to help families advocate for services and supports. She has experience representing clients in special education and Section 504 issues, higher education issues including accommodations on high-stakes testing and graduate school admission tests, guardianship matters, estate planning, and adult services. At this time, I would like to introduce Hillary Freeman, who will be leading the presentation for this evening's topic, Preparing for Life Beyond High School for Individuals with Developmental Disabilities, Learning Disabilities, and Mental Illness. Welcome, Hillary. Hillary, you should have control of the presentation now.
Yes, thank you. One moment as okay. Thank you everybody for joining me tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about transitioning to the post-secondary environment for individuals with all types of disabilities. A little bit about me. I started this law office in September of 2011 after practicing for several years in a different special education firm. I advocate for people with disabilities across their lifespan, and that includes special education, guardianship, estate planning, and adult services. I got into this field because I have a brother with autism, and he is 39, turning 40 soon, and he lives in a group home in Princeton, New Jersey. So I've been involved in advocating for him for the majority of his life and continue to do so. He functions at the level of a 3-year-old, and he is obsessed with Sesame Street, as some of you know. So I'm actively involved in his life and trying to make sure everything is going well for him. So tonight we're going to talk, like I said, we're going to talk about transitioning to the post-secondary environment, and this is really my favorite area of special education. And the reason for that is, while the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the law that primarily governs special education, says that all students are entitled to an individualized education plan. A lot of people say that the IEP is really not so individualized, and it's pretty actually standard. It comes from a template, a computer program, and there are a lot of check boxes, and it's not always really individualized to the student's unique needs. The transition plan is it's supposed to really be individualized according to the student's goals and the goals after they graduate from high school. So they could graduate at 18, 19, 20, or 21 depending on their skill levels. But their entitlement to education ends June following their 21st birthday. So this can govern, the transition process usually starts around the age of 14, and I'll get into that in more detail later. But in New Jersey it starts at 14, and you're really primarily planning for your child's success in the post-secondary environment. Okay, so with that said, what we're going to talk about tonight is what is transition planning. It's probably important for you to know since that's what we're talking about. Who does it apply to? When do we start the planning process? Where is it implemented, and how is it implemented? Okay, so by the way, if you have questions along the way, I'll be taking questions at different times, and you'll obviously know when I do. But feel free to ask anything that you want related to this topic at hand. So what is transition planning? Transition planning is the movement from school to adult life upon graduation or upon leaving school when the student ages out. When the student graduates or leaves school following their June following their 21st birthday. At this point in the child's career, you're planning on what will they be doing when they graduate. Will they be going to college? Will they be going to a 2-year college, a 4-year college? Will they need an adult day program, a job coach? Will they be living in a group home? You want to start thinking about really what are their goals, okay? So with that said, I'm curious for polling question number 1, how old is your child or sibling with special needs? Melanie?
Okay, Hillary, we did post that question, so if everyone can just click on a category that would pertain to them, and we'll give you a few seconds before we close that poll. Hillary, that should give you 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Hillary, it looks like we have 42% of the people attending have a child between the age of 17 to 21. 37% have a child age of 14 to 16. 16% do not have a child or a sibling with special needs. And 5% have a child under the age of 14.
Okay, great. You'll all be interested to know that this entire presentation covers all of those ages. I'm finding lately that a lot of schools are not addressing the transition plan in a timely fashion. So it's never too late as long as your child's still in school. And I'll get into really the procedural timelines and everything in a few minutes. To gear the presentation a little bit further towards the audience, I have another polling question, and that is, what is your child's disability? If they have a learning disability, ADD or ADHD, choose A. A developmental disability, that includes autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, things like that. Maybe a intellectual disability, put that in B. Mental illness, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, you can put that in C, and obviously as D, you still don't have a child or sibling with special needs.
And Hillary, we're going to give people just a few seconds to fill this out. Okay, Hillary, we have 74% clicked B, developmental disability. And then we have 11% that clicked A for learning disability, and also 11% that clicked B. I still do not have a child or sibling with special needs. 5% clicked C under mental illness.
Okay, and even more directly, now I have one more question for you, and then we'll actually get into the presentation. Does your child or sibling have a transition plan in or her IEP? A, yes. B, no, but she or he is too young. C, no, but she or he should have had one by now. What is a transition plan? And E, you can keep asking me, but I still don't have a child or sibling with special needs.
And Hillary, we're going to give people just a few seconds for this one also.
Thanks.
Okay, Hillary. We have 45% click C, no, but he or she should have one by now. 25% clicked yes. We have 15% that clicked you keep asking me, but I still do not have a child or sibling. Then we have 10% that clicked what is a transition plan, and 5% clicked no, he or she is too young.
What I find interesting is that the last question, the percentage has changed throughout questions 1, 2, and 3. So I find that interesting that at some point along the way you lost your child with special needs or you got one. But anyway, so like I said before, the transition process is planning for what will your child be doing when they graduate. And again, they're talking about life skills, talking about living arrangements, educational opportunities, so college, a 2-year college or a 4-year college, where if they're going to work, what industry are they going to work in. So that's ultimately the transition plan. And you want to know, how does the process start? Okay, so first of all, who participates in the development of the transition plan? The parents are invited to attend. The student with a disability at age 14 is invited to attend. If they're not there, if they don't attend the meeting, then their preferences or interests should be taken into account in developing the transition plan. Agency representative, I have 2 stars next to that. And the reason for that is the agency representative is somebody that might works at a different agencies such as the Division of Developmental Disabilities, DDD, DVRS. Those are the 2 primary agencies that we're going to be talking about tonight, given the answers to the disability question. But those people are supposed to be invited, and if your child will be receiving services from those agencies, and you'll decide that through the IEP meetings. Okay, so when they can be invited under a few different circumstances. One, the parent has to provide the consent for the agency representative to be there, to be invited and to attend. Okay, they're not automatically invited to the meeting. We have privacy issues at stake, so you have to really consider, the team has to make sure that the parent is okay with the agency representative being there. The other piece of it is that the law has changed in recent years in that the agency representative should be invited, but they're not required to attend. So if they don't attend, then that doesn't mean that now the district is off the hook for providing the services that theoretically the agency representative should have provided. The school district has to come up with a different plan with the parents to determine how the services will be provided. So like I said, they're not off the hook, and which is a good thing because the representatives from DDD or DVRS don't always attend the meetings, especially when the child is in the younger years. So you can't ignore the goals of, or the purpose of the agency representative. The team still has to come up with their own plan in addressing the special needs of the student. Then you obviously have the case manager. The rest of it is really the members of the IEP team. The case manager, the regular education teacher, somebody who's knowledgeable about regular education services and related services, special education teacher. These people hopefully have some knowledge of the student that you're talking about. They're not required to, but if they don't know the special needs child, then they should really have a pretty good understanding of the services that are available through the school district, and maybe they can provide some input based on the discussions at hand. Then you have a member of the child study team who can interpret the evaluation results. It's clearly not helpful if you're given an evaluation and you don't understand what's going on. As recently at an IEP meeting where where an occupational therapy evaluation was given, and the parent questioned the results, but also questioned the administration of the test and why certain tests were given, and the OT could not provide the answers. So that wasn't obviously very helpful. But it's really important that somebody can explain the evaluations to the parents. You're not expected to know how to understand the evaluations just because you're a parent of a special needs child. And then maybe the supervisor of special services or the principal, they're not required to be there. They can be there if invited. They can be there if they're not invited. The idea is that they're knowledgeable. They're supposed to be knowledgeable about the services that the district can provide, and also consent to or approve the services, subject to board approval, which if necessary, I'll get into it another time. And then anyone else who may have knowledge of the student's needs. The parents can bring anybody that they want because it's their child that you're talking about, but the idea is that they should have some knowledge of the student. The district can invite other people, but if they don't work for the school district, then they really should get the consent of the parent because, again, you're talking about the special needs child. Okay, so those are the people that would normally participate in the development of the transition plan. Now, how does the process start? In the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, I'm going to start referencing that as the IDEA. That law states that the transition process really they're supposed to start at 16 or younger if appropriate. But in New Jersey, it is required that the transition process start at age 14. So that's one of the good things about living in New Jersey, other than the taxes. Obviously, that was sarcasm. You can laugh later if you want. So in New Jersey, at age 14, you're supposed to get a written notice that the IEP meeting is going to be scheduled. And in addition to the normal things about who shall participate in the meeting, what time is it, the day, and the purpose, it should also include, around the age of 14, a statement indicating the purpose of the meeting, indicating that the purpose of the meeting will be the development of the transition services for the student, and that the school district will invite the student. Okay, I often get the question of, does my child have to be there? I don't feel comfortable talking about these things in front of the child. Do they have to be there? No. You can waive that, but again, you want to take into account the student's strengths and preferences. If they can communicate that, if they can't communicate, you might be able to figure out what they like and they don't like, and you should really consider that in developing the transition plan. So no, the student doesn't have to be there. A way around it, if you don't want them there for the entire meeting, might be to invite them there at the end, or invite them there in the beginning and then say, thank you, you can go back to class now. Or you can say whatever you want to ask them to leave the meeting. So those are some different options. Those are the things that the written notice shall include at the age of 14, okay, when your child turns 14. You can start the process younger if you want, and if the team deems necessary or appropriate, but you're not required to. They are required to start the process when the child turns 14. Now, at age 16, you're going to get a written notice that the IEP meeting shall, again, indicate the purpose, that you're considering transition services for the student, indicate that the school will invite the student, and identify any other agency that will be invited to send a representative. Like I said, DDD and DVRS. This is your opportunity, if you don't want them there, to say that. You can certainly let them know ahead of time, but if you get this notice and it indicates that somebody's going to be invited to attend, you can certainly indicate that you don't want them to be there if that is the case. Okay, and so those are a few different options for you. Okay, now a lot of people are wondering, well, what's the difference between what happens at age 14? Oh, first, I'm sorry, I'll back up for a second. Does anybody have any questions about what I've said so far?
Hillary?
Yes.
I'm sorry. It says, my district says that the regular ed teacher will not attend the meeting because my child is in a self-contained classroom. Can they do this?
As an attorney, I'm not supposed to give absolute statements, but no. They need to invite a regular education teacher, regardless of whether your child is in regular education programs or placement. You can waive that if you would like, but they have to invite them, and then everybody determines whether it's necessary for them to be there. Any other questions?
Actually, we're just starting to get questions coming in now, so if you want to move forward, I'll collect those and we'll ask them in just a few minutes.
Okay. At age 14, I'm going to go into the differences between what happens at 14 and what happens at 16. At 14, when you discuss the transition plan, it's a lot of identification. You're identifying the student's strengths, interests, and preferences. What do they like to do? What they don't like to do? You know, if they have an interest in computer programming or robots or airplanes. I had a client who was really interested in auto mechanics. Do they like routines? Do they need routines, or will they get really upset if there's a break in a routine? So that goes along with preferences. Do they like Sesame Street, like my brother, because I always have to bring that up in every presentation? Or do they, do they like Dora? Do they like watching sci-fi thrillers? Do they like electronics? I'm just giving some examples. Are they verbal? Do they like giving direction? Are they pretty shy? Essentially, what are their interests? Because you want to, whatever they would do when they graduate, you want to think about what would be a good placement for them. So this is where the student's attendance is helpful. But if they're nonverbal and you can't, or you don't find that it'll be productive to have them at the meeting, then you don't have to. Then you just talk about this at the meeting. And then again, you're identifying a course of study and related strategies and or activities that are consistent with the strengths, interests, and preferences and are intended to assist the student in developing or attaining post-secondary goals. The way I describe transition plans, and I think this is the most effective way of determining what course of study and related strategies should be identified and implemented through the transition plan. Again, think about where will your child be when they graduate, okay? If they're going to college, if they're going to a 2-year college or a 4-year college. If they're going to a 2-year college, what skills do they need to be successful in that environment? Are they going to be living at home? Are they going to be living in an apartment? Do they need to learn to navigate public transportation? Do they need to learn to cook regardless of whether they're in a 2-year college or a 4-year college? If they're going to a 4-year college, are they going to be living in the dorms? Where are they going to be living? So what skills do they need to be successful in that environment? Self-advocacy skills. They should learn to identify and bring their disability to the attention of the university. Why? When they get to college, colleges are not required to come out and seek your child as a student with special needs. They need to learn to bring their disability to the attention of the university to get accommodations in college, okay? Not specially designed instruction, just accommodations, such as enlarged print, a reader, a scribe, maybe extended time on an exam, things like that. So that's for college. Do they need to learn life skills such as showering every day? And I know a lot of college freshmen don't shower every day regardless, but it's something that you might want to address. What other skills that are needed to be successful in that environment? Do they need to learn to drive? Is that appropriate for your child? I know of a situation where a child with autism hit another individual, and when they were driving, and as if the initial impact wasn't enough, they kept on repeating it. They kept backed up, they hit them again, they backed up and hit them again. So if that's something that your child might do, you might want to think about whether getting a license is appropriate. So that's something that would be important for college, okay? Those are some examples of what might be appropriate for college. Now for a workplace, do you need, what areas do they would they be interested in? If they're interested in electronics, maybe it would be great to work at a Best Buy, where they could talk about the history of electronics, or bring the customer to the appropriate electronic device and tell them all about it. That's just one example. If they're into auto mechanics, what skills do they need to be successful in that environment? Maybe go to a Votech. Be careful with the Votech, though. They're great programs, but in my experience, they're not as attentive to the special needs of the child. So they still have an obligation to provide those services, especially design instruction, but you just have to, you might want to be on top of it a little bit more than you normally would. So a Votech program might be appropriate to teach a child the skills to be successful as an auto mechanic. And then you talk about, well, will they be living in the community environment? Will they be living in a group home? What skills do they need to live independently? These are all things that need to be identified at age 14 through the transition plan. Okay, again, identified. And then number 3, description of the consultation, a description of the need for consultation from other agencies such as DDD and DVRS. So at this point, you're talking about what agencies might be responsible for providing the services. And then at that point, that's when at 16 you know whether they're going to be invited or not. So, and again, 4 is statement of needed interagency linkages and responsibilities. Sometimes there are wait lists that you need to get on for such services, and you might want to reach out to those appropriate agencies to make sure that your child is on the appropriate wait list to access the services when he or she graduates or sooner, if appropriate. Any questions about that or anything?
Hillary, we do have a question. We actually have a couple of questions around the same topic. It says, what can we do if the school does not do a transition plan, and are there any options for families without going through an attorney?
Well, I'm not supposed to say that, but I will anyway. If the school district has not done a transition plan at all by the age of 14, and especially 16, you can file a complaint investigation with the Department of Education, Office of Special Education. And that's also given at the back of a form is at the back of your prize booklet, which is the colorful booklet that is on your bookshelves year after year after year. You can file a complaint investigation that they have not given you a transition plan yet. You can also write a letter to the child study team requesting a transition plan, and hopefully they respond appropriately. If they say no, then to your request to develop a transition plan, then you can file for due process seeking one. But at first, I would go with the complaint investigation because that can be investigated and enforced for free by the Department of Education. Another question?
We do have another one.
Okay.
We know that at the age of 14 that we have to identify the course of study and related strategies or activities. Can those identifications be put into place as services started by the age of 14, or do we have to wait till 16?
No, you don't have to wait until 16. They have to be identified at 14, but they can certainly be implemented at 14 as well. What the law says, which I'll get to the next slide, at 16 you want to talk about and implement those strategies and services that have been identified previously, and at age 16 at this meeting. The law says, as you can see, beginning with the IEP in place for the school year when the student turns 16 or younger if deemed appropriate by the IEP team. So, and it says the same thing for when your child turns 14. Now, there's nothing that says they can't start earlier, but they have to start by 14 and 16. One more question.
Hillary, we actually have a follow-up question to that, to the answer you just gave. It says, I'm sorry, I'm waiting for the question to come in fully. What if If a parent feels it would be appropriate for a child's services to start at the age of 14, but the district wants to wait till 16, who makes that final decision?
Well, you talk about it at the IEP meeting. If they say no, you have the right to file for due process. That is a question of what's appropriate to enable your child to make progress. If you think that the IEP is not appropriate because it's not implementing the services in a timely fashion, you can file for due process to prove and let the district prove that, because they have the burden, you want to let the district prove that their position is accurate or appropriate. Okay. So now, like I said, so at age 16, you want to start implementing the services that have been identified previously in the transition plan. They include, like I said, everything that's from 14. You want to talk about the student's strengths and weaknesses. You want to identify what your child's goals are for when they graduate. And then you also want to identify what skills do they need to be successful in the post-secondary environment. So do they need to learn proper hygiene? Do they need to learn to initiate conversations? Do they need to learn to navigate the college campus or some sort of other environment? Do they need to learn to make a purchase on their own? Remember to count the change, or remember to ask for change, and then remember to count the change. These are all skills that would be appropriate in the post-secondary environment. Appropriate behaviors. Okay, I can tell you that when I take my brother to the mall, he will jump up and down if I say no to him for something that he wants. He doesn't understand the concept of making a purchase, so he will just take things, which is always fun for us. He has also gone into see Sesame Street Live and knocked down the podium because, not the podium, I forgot the term, but the signs, because he was reaching up high for an Elmo. These things are inappropriate. So it's important to address appropriate behaviors in various environments, not just the school environment. Okay, because you don't always focus on independent living in the school environment. You need to learn your child needs to learn, and maybe you do too, to generalize their skills into other environments beyond the academic setting. So the transition plan can include that as well. So when we talk about post-secondary goals, it's not just related to academics, it's related to the training, education, employment, and independent living arenas that your child might encounter when they graduate from high school. And then the transition services include a course of study if needed, to assist the child in reaching those goals. So what they mean by that, they being the legislators and the courts, what they mean by that is that if there are any prerequisites to getting into a college program, then it's important that the school district provide those prerequisites to enable their child to be able to be admitted into that program. If they have a certain amount of like a language requirement, and if it may being the major or the school that your child wants to go to, it's important to make sure that they fulfill those requirements in high school. Okay, so that's one example. Another example might be that they can take classes in a college environment during high school. The school district could potentially pay for that, just the course, or maybe supports on the college campus while they're taking the course to enable them to be successful. These are all things that can be talked about in the transition meeting and put into the transition plan. Any questions about that?
Hillary, the questions that we had actually regarding that you just answered. We do have one question now. It says, what responsibilities does the district have to provide travel training to my child?
Unmuted. Travel training to your child. Again, every lawyer will start off with an answer with it depends. You look to the goals. Okay, what will your child be doing when they graduate? And does it require travel training? Does it require that they be able to navigate public transportation to get to that area? Then, if so, then they have an obligation to teach them to travel appropriately. I have had clients who have gotten job coaches, or they call them job coaches, but coaches to take them on a train or help them get a cab, things like that. So those are some ideas that have been put into a transition plan to help them be successful and get to their place of employment. Okay, so what is included in a transition plan? The transition services are coordinated set of activities that are designed to be within a result-oriented process. It's focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-secondary activities, including education, training, employment, living arrangements, and community participation. It's supposed to be based on the individual's needs and include the instruction to help them achieve those skills so they can be successful in that environment. What on earth does that mean? It's a lot of words. What it means is, like I was saying before, you pick the goal, and then you say, what services does your child need to teach them the skills to be successful in that environment, okay, or help them achieve that goal. So if they're going to college, the 2-year college, 4-year college, what skills do they need to be successful in the college environment? I mentioned social skills before. Peter Gerhardt, who is a former job coach from Douglas and now is in New York, I heard him present once, and he was talking about his idea of teaching a child to communicate on the college campus and teach them social skills. As part of the transition plan, he took the student to the college campus. And the student who had autism, and they were really anxious about engaging in social conversations with peers, whether or not he knew them or not. He knew the students or not. When approaching a group, he would get red, he would start sweating, he might jump up and down or get really shy. So Peter, who I think is absolutely brilliant, gave him a Bluetooth. And he put it on his ear, and he stood far back, and he gave him the steps. So the student kept on walking, and Peter would talk to him through the Bluetooth and give him the instruction to navigate that social situation. That's something that certainly can be implemented in the IEP. Then, as a result, the student was walking around campus talking to himself like everybody else talks to themselves with the Bluetooth on their ear. And he looked completely normal, and he continued on his way. He didn't have somebody standing next to him giving him the instruction. He looked completely like he fit in, and he just went through the process and learned that skill through step-by-step instruction. The other thing that Peter did was he taught him to say, "Hey, what's up?" as he walked past some people that he knew. Because how many times do you walk past people and actually say, "Hi, how are you?" and wait for a response? I can tell you I do that sometimes, but I don't do that consistently. I just say, "Hi, how are you?" automatically. And so when the student goes on the college campus, he just says, "Hey, what's up?" and he keeps on walking. Again, it's completely acceptable to do that. He fits right in, and that was a skill that was taught through the transition plan. Okay, so that was just one example. Again, he wanted to be independent on the college campus, so that was something that would help him be independent on the college campus. And as I was saying before, with the auto mechanics industry, you need a lot of skills to work on cars. I don't have any of those skills. I can't even identify cars on a regular basis, but so let alone take them apart and put them back together. You want to start really think about, well, look at all areas of auto mechanics. What skills do they need to be successful in that profession? They need to learn to get to their job. They need to learn to be responsible. They need to learn to engage in social conversation. They need to, they dress appropriately for the position. These are pick out temperature appropriate clothing. These are all skills that can be taught through the transition plan and through when you put goals in the IEP to address that. So I'm going to keep on stopping because I want to make sure you understand every step of the process. So if there are any questions, this would be another good time to ask me.
Hillary, we do have a couple of questions. The first question is, can we address the needs of lower functioning, non-college bound individuals?
Of course. There are a lot of needs of non-college bound individuals. They sometimes they often need to learn social skills. They need to learn life skills, such as getting dressed, toilet training, showering, crossing the street, knowing that and looking both ways, making a purchase, remembering to count the change. What else? There are just so many life skills that are so important. They definitely can be and should be addressed through this transition plan. If they're going to be going into through DDD, if they're going to be placed in a group home or an adult day program, they need to be on a wait list to get into those programs. So you need to contact DDD, and that might change in January, but as of now, you contact DDD, write a letter to them, making sure that they are on the wait list to be for an adult day program. They might say that they don't need to be on the wait list until 2019 or 20. There's nothing to say that they can't be on the list earlier than that. So make sure that they're on the wait list for an adult day program. They generally do approve funding for those placements. It's not guaranteed, but they generally do provide funding for the adult day programs. You could also get money to develop your own program through DDD. And again, there's a wait list for that too. It's at the same wait list that you would get through the adult day program. So the idea is just make sure that you're on the list for an adult day program, and you can decide later on whether you want to develop your own program or take advantage of one of the programs that are already available. This should be discussed at the IEP meeting discussing the transition plan. Other life skills that might be appropriate through the transition plan, basically anything. The sky's the limit. You know, and this is again is why I love this area, this section so much of the IEP. It's because you can be creative. The law does not say that something does not have to be provided, okay, or can't be provided. If a school district will tell you that this is all we offer or we don't offer that here, a red flag should go up, because the law doesn't say that something doesn't have to be provided. The law says figure out what your child will be doing and how can we teach them to be successful in that environment. So there's nothing to say that they can't, there's nothing to limit the school district from providing a certain arrangement or certain services. Something that is really up and coming is there are transition programs that are outside of the school environment. The College of New Jersey has a program where students with autism or other developmental disabilities attend the program usually around the age of 18. The school district can pay for it. There's nothing to say that they can't, and I definitely have cases where the school district has agreed to pay for this transition program. The Yale School in Cherry Hill has a similar program. Bancroft has a similar program where they place students on the college campus through Camden County College. And on those college campuses, they're getting the specially designed instruction that address their disabilities and teach them to be successful in that environment. They might not necessarily go to college after that. There are a lot of, it's just giving them the opportunity to live or just to be on the college campus. I know ECLC in North Jersey has one, and I know I believe Ocean County College has one as well. They're getting the specially designed instruction there. Job coaches. Job coaches can take the students into Best Buy and teach them skills. They can take them into a cafeteria. Whole Foods, I know, has a wonderful program where students are learning to stock shelves. there are a lot of different programs that are out there that are beyond the school district's property that it might be considered an out-of-district placement, it might not. It just depends on the actual program that you're asking for. So definitely look into that. Look into what services, what your child wants to do or what you want them to do, and the different transition programs that might be able to provide those services if you're not satisfied with the program that the school district is providing. So question number 4, have you thought about what your child with special needs will do after he or she graduates? This is kind of a little bit redundant. I am actually really interested in knowing the answer to it. So Melanie, if you please. Melanie?
Hillary, I'm going to close the question in just a second. I'm sorry.
I don't know if you did it, if you heard me.
Okay. So we have 55% said still thinking about it. 30% said supported employment. 10% again says I do not have a child with a disability, and 5% said college. Give me 1 second, Hillary. I'm just going to unmute you. Okay.
That's great. Thank you, Melanie. That brings me to a really great point. I'm biased because I'm making the point, but I still think it's a good point, and you can be the judge later. If you're not sure what your child will be doing when they graduate, you're not expected to know at 14. You're not necessarily expected to know at 16. You're just trying to get the process started because you want to think about it. If you really have no idea, you can certainly, or if you have some idea and you want to verify it, ask for a vocational assessment. You can ask for a transition assessment or vocational assessment. They're essentially the same thing, where the person that's administering the evaluation will ask your child questions, ask them what their strengths and weaknesses are. If they're nonverbal, they'll review records. They'll review the records anyway. But they'll interview you, and they'll talk about what the evaluation, the conclusions will discuss what recommendations or what areas that should be explored after a lot of questions are being answered. So a vocational assessment is a really great way of kind of narrowing down the field to determine what your child might be successful in when they graduate. And then from the vocational assessment, you can say, all right, well, based on that, we've decided that your child will be going to engaging in supported employment through an adult day program. Like my brother works in a sheltered workshop, and he labels postcards and sorts different objects. He really likes it. He's nonverbal, but I can tell that he likes it because when I visit him, he'd rather do that than talk to me. So I have a feeling that he likes that activity. But the vocational assessment will help you figure that out. It does not make sense once you figure out what your child will be doing. You're going to think about whether the transition plan is appropriate. What services do they need? If your child is interested in culinary arts, it doesn't make sense for them to go to an auto mechanics program, okay? And it doesn't make sense for them to work in an office if they're not going to be working in an office when they graduate. I can't tell you how many cases I have where the child has one goal in mind, and the school district, just because it's standard for them, this is the transition program they offer, so the child's placed in there. That happens all the time, and it's not appropriate. You're not stuck to the transition program that the school district provides. You can be creative. You're supposed to be creative to make sure that your child's goals are being addressed and they can be successful. Okay, you don't have to wait until they turn 20. I would encourage you to not wait until they turn 20. Start early. Get the vocational assessment early. If it's If your child is older, there's nothing to say, no reason to say that your child cannot get another transition assessment if it's been modified at all. If their needs or strengths and weaknesses have changed, you can certainly do it over and over and over again if you want. Sorry if anybody works for the school district out there. If you determine that the vocational assessment is necessary as part of an evaluation planning meeting, then if the district does one and you disagree, or if you don't think it's appropriate, or it's not, you disagree with the results of the evaluation, you can ask for an independent evaluation, okay, and it's at the district's expense. So you can certainly do that. And the other thing is that the law has recently changed in May regarding independent evaluations. You don't necessarily have to give the district the opportunity to do the evaluations first anymore. In my interpretation of the reading of the legislation, or not legislation, of the code, is that you have one evaluation planning meeting, and then you determine what evaluations are necessary. If later on you say, well, this area wasn't addressed, then according to this code, I believe, and I would guide you to say that, well, okay, well, now you can ask for an independent evaluation, and you don't have to wait again for them to do another evaluation. That always takes time, and it's actually contrary to the IDEA. So if they say no to the vocational assessment, you can ask for an independent evaluation and get it privately. There are many people out there that do it, and agencies. Okay, so that goes with the haven't decided yet. Child, we've discussed in detail. If they need accommodations then in college, then it's appropriate to establish the history of receiving the accommodations in the high school and elementary school environments. That can be done through the IEP. And if they get accommodations on the SATs, then that also helps establish that they've had a disability or been regarded as having a disability and they've received the accommodations. Sometimes teachers will provide accommodations, but regardless of whether it's implemented, it's actually in the IEP. Teachers are doing you a great favor, and they're really nice by providing the accommodations, but if it's not identified through the IEP, then it's really hard to establish receiving the accommodations when they graduate in the college environment. So it might interfere with your child's ability to get the accommodations then. The day program, you really want to think about, again, where will they be working? Will they need supervised employment, or will they be able to do it independently? What wait lists are necessary for your child to be on to make sure that they can access that place of employment or that day program when they graduate, and when does your child need to be on that list? Again, I think that around 16 it's appropriate to contact DDD and make sure that they're on the program for the wait list for an adult day program. I briefly mentioned before, Get to Work, I briefly mentioned before that at least until January you're supposed to contact DDD to get on the list. Nobody knows what's going to happen after January. The Department of Human Services is restructuring, as some of you may have encountered. Some people who have been clients of DDD for years have been transferred to DDS, and now DDS is considered the single point of contact. But as far as we know at this point, if you want your child to be on a wait list for DDD services when they graduate, you write a letter to DDD, regardless of whether they're in DDS or DDD. You still write the letter to DDD requesting that they be placed on the wait list, the appropriate wait list. With regard to living arrangements, there are 3 wait lists to access a group home. There's the regular waiting list, the priority waiting list, and the priority deferred waiting list. The priority waiting list is the only one that moves. That's a topic for a different presentation, but you just want to make sure that your child is on the priority waiting list for a group home. If they're on another wait list, that's not going to move. So it's as if you're not on a wait list at all. So it's really important to take the steps necessary to get your child on the priority waiting list. The priority waiting list, by the way, is 10 years long. So if you have no idea what you want your child to be doing later on, get your child on the wait list now if you can, if your child's eligible. And again, if you go to my website, there's criteria on how your child can be eligible to be on the priority wait list. Also look into whether you want to develop your own program. Again, DDD provides money to develop your own program, but you have to be on the appropriate wait list to access that money. So that's the living arrangements. And with that said, I'll leave it open for any questions.
Unmuted.
Hillary, I'm sorry about that. I was having trouble unmuting myself. Hillary, at this time, I do have quite a few questions. The questions are some very specific and some off topic. So if it's okay for you, I would like to actually just send those to you privately if possible.
Of course. Of course. Not a problem at all. And if there are any questions after this presentation that you haven't thought of, certainly email me at Hillary, Hillary, at freemanlawoffices.com.
So Hillary, I want to start by thanking you for sharing your time and information on this topic. And thank you to everyone else for joining us for this evening's presentation. Your feedback is important to us, so please look for your evaluation via email within the next 24 hours. Your input will help us determine future topics, so we encourage you to complete this evaluation. This webinar will be archived on the Family Support Center of New Jersey website. That's fscnj.org. Please remember to register for Hillary's next webinar coming up on August 1st, titled When Bullying is a Problem. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you very much.